Hello and welcome back to my GTNH playthrough. It is Friday, April 24th, and we are over here in the water plant. Because we have made the grade 8 water. This guy is the multi-block for it. Last I left off on Monday. Sorry, I haven't uploaded all this week, but last I left off on Monday, I had set up the multi-block, but I had not actually turned it on and had... honestly, it's been so long, I don't remember what the other thing I did was main goal. I know I was messing around with witchery. I will say I did go and kill the Chaos Dragon after all said and done and got all the witchery bosses done, but there's not really too much a note here. For the witchery bosses, I basically just had to go through the wiki and see how to do each one, or like have them form, and then it actually unlocked a quest that wasn't the quest I thought it was going to be. It kill all the things. It unlocks this quest, which is I assumed it was going to be to go kill the Chaos Dragon, but it's actually just to get all these things, which I have plenty of. So at some point I'll just pick everything up and hold it, and it's no big deal. But so I just went and flew and killed the Chaos Dragon just to see what was up. Got some Chaos shards and stuff like that. It was cool looking. It's a gnarly explosion, but nothing really of note there. Otherwise, it's just kind of been happened to be one of those busy weeks at work, so not gonna bog down with it. But that's just why I haven't uploaded this week. I haven't made any progress up till today when I was finally caught back up and able to play for a while. I will say I started working on this yesterday, but the only progress stuff I've done basically is I bred a couple bees, specifically Cosmic Neutronium and Infinity. Because I do want to change out my Infinity recipe, which I'll get into why here in a minute, and got this guy ready to go, which he is not currently running, mainly because I am actually not short on Infinity. That's actually nice. So as we go through this, one of the things that prevents this from turning on is if this is less than 6,000 and some change, 6,048. I got that number off the wiki ultimately because the way I went about solving this guy was kind of, I feel a little bad about some of it because there were a couple things I got from the wiki, and then the rest, because I do try to do it on myself because I do think they are cool puzzles. But specifically with this, so just to get into how I automated this, there's basically a couple steps to automating it, or at least the way I think about it in my mind, which is what are the rules? How are we going to, like, what does implementing the rules look like, so to speak, and then just essentially the logic, because ultimately it is just like there's a logic circuit that takes care of all this stuff. So with the first part, the part that really, there were two things that tripped me up, which the logic all three, just depending on to various degrees. For the rules, when I was reading this, now there was a couple things that weren't really clear to me, and you'll notice if we're looking at this third section down, every time you put something in, you're going to waste Infinity. So I did have to waste a couple cycles to see if it worked, but I couldn't quite figure it out for certain things. The first one was so it has the order of catalysts in combination does not matter, so up, down can be identified as this. And then now I'm actually seeing on the second line where I missed the wording that would have solved it. So one of the things I wasn't clear on, and it's just because I can't read because it says it right here, is whether it could be whether it could be two of the same catalyst. But if we look at it every recipe cycle, a different combination of two different quark-relating catalysts. So already that was the main thing I couldn't figure out. And then the other part I wasn't sure of is also here. So now I'm just feeling like an idiot. So the other thing I wasn't sure is what happened to the catalysts that weren't in. And I don't know if I was just in a rush, but yeah, I gotta give the staff credit because I'm just dumb. So on the fourth section, the bottom line at the end of the recipe returns all incorrectly inserted catalysts into the output bus. So the things I didn't know were here for me to find without having to go to a wiki, so I feel bad about that. And then the last thing, I wasn't exactly sure, and I might be missing it here, but is that, so obviously we need a combination of two different, so like at this one it says up, down, and there are 6 different catalysts if we type in quark. But I wasn't sure if for like combination, for example, it was going to be like 1 2 1 3 1 4, like you needed to keep inserting the 1, or if it was going to be like 1 to 2 to 3, and then the pairs inserted, so to speak, would be 1 2 2 3. And so that was the other thing. And then so basically I got that from the wiki, and I ended up spoiling to myself that while trying to figure out whether it could do different ones, and I figured out it couldn't by the math of it, because essentially there are 15 different combinations of quark catalysts that can come together, whereas if the duplicates was allowed, it would be 21, because I started making an Excel sheet, so like if up was counted or down, like there would be essentially 6 extra pairs that you'd have to account for. Instead there's 15, and also because while looking at that, if it is the second way I was describing, so if we like treat this one as 1 2 3, if you go 1 to 2 to 3, it counts as a pair of 1 2, a pair of 2 3, and so on. Like you don't need to keep re-inserting everything, and then you basically just do that in an order. And so I was messing around with the Excel sheet, and I came up with one order. I did ultimately go with the order that's on the wiki though, just because my order I came up with too short, and I couldn't figure out what I was missing, and then yeah, it was just the whole thing. But that's all right. Even though all that stuff kind of got spoiled for me, still led to the next step was like actually being able to implement it. And so I've got a bunch of random stuff around here. Not everything, but so you can kind of, I decided just to leave it in for now, just to kind of show different ideas I had. I kind of wish I had left the other part. So my next problem was, how do I get exactly one item into the input bus? And then the final part would just be, okay, do the logic of that. Which ultimately, there are 6 quarks to enter, so quark catalysts to enter, so I knew it was going to be 6 inputs. Now this is the second to last setup I had, with the final setup down here. I was using a bunch of different methods. The first way I went with, I tried to use 82 with like, I don't have them anymore, but essentially what I had going was I had, let's just do like a drawer, just for visual reference. I had like storage, doesn't really matter. Just pretend this is a item storage bus. So basically what I had was from the system, so I did make a subnet for it, and then I would have it, the only storage for the quarks being 6 different drawers, where it would come into the system here, it would deposit them here. Then I had storage down here with a conduit and an export bus, where I would give it a redstone signal, and then would use the redstone card, which has a once per pulse mode, and tried to have it do one item that way. Would not take for the life of me. So the next method I swapped to was the same setup, instead using Ender IO conduit, where I had the same setup of like a drawer, or like, put this here, I had the same setup from above for depositing the quarks in, and then I had this guy exporting on signal only, and then I had a downgrade in here so that it would only output a single item at a time, which this actually, for the first few runs, I left that set up for a while, and it seemed like it worked, and then I noticed it wasn't quite working, and that no matter, like, because this is quite simple now, where it's literally just like a wireless receiver into, or down here I've got a wireless receiver into a repeater. So just imagine this instead was a conduit and a drawer, where I was messing around with this wire, the amount of time the repeater needed to run to get it to actually trigger the Ender IO conduit once, to the point then I even started using, the whole reason I have these Ender IO redstone conduit was I was using this to try to get the signal because it didn't seem to be taking, where I would have this kind of like sticking out like this, and then the redstone wire up to it, and like the redstone wire had like a visual animation that it was like quote unquote attached, even though it wasn't really like attached. And then that seemed like it worked for like a cycle or two, and then it just didn't. So yeah, ultimately then I started Googling how do you drop a single item into an input bus in GTNH, and I did not realize that this is just something I didn't know, that a regular dropper can actually drop inside a hatch. Because droppers drop it like an item, I would assume, my natural instinct would be that this dropper to here would not work. But the nice thing for droppers is that when it gets a redstone signal, no matter how long the signal is, it only drops once per redstone signal. But then the final thing I was still having issues where like this would go off, it would drop one nice and neatly, and I was like, yes, it works. Then it would drop this one, and then this one started like dumping all its catalysts in this setup up here. And I'm not sure exactly why. I think it's a vanilla Minecraft mechanic where like the blocks being next to each other essentially shared the redstone signal sometimes. I don't know, it was weird. So I moved it from up there to down here, which I had done a couple times while trying to figure out the redstone thing anyways. And I also tried, before I moved it down here, using colored wire, but it seems like insulated wire, but it seems like the insulated wire wasn't triggering the dropper to actually drop the catalyst. So ultimately, this is what I went with. We got storage buses with a dropper, and then we'll get to the logic circuit last. But essentially, when the logic circuit down below triggers, it gives a signal here, drops the catalyst in, and boom, it works. For the subnet, I didn't really get into it too much. Basically, what I've got going on is the only thing in here, this little subnet literally just does catalyst in, and then this output bus, catalyst out. I do have a separate output bus down here into the water plants subnetwork where it outputs unknown particles, because that's also a byproduct of the grade 8 water sometimes. In this storage bus is just the unaligned housing. So basically this is what, if we're looking at quarks again, this thing right here, the unaligned, is what's returned when the recipe is successful. So you'll get 2 of these back. So then over here I've got level maintainers, 2 crafting cores to make sure it calls for the craft fast enough so that it doesn't like delay the next cycle. And then I actually have this guy. I set up this laser engraver with the 6 separate recipes for the quirks, and I have it running at UIV. Just again, that makes the recipe only take 2 seconds and gets it back into the system. So if for some reason, essentially the logic isn't screwed up if for some reason that's long. So technically this system could fail to these guys lagging, which does randomly happen for my other autocraft, so it's a little sketchy, but honestly it works, and that part doesn't seem to have been a problem. So that was what I went with. The next time I show this thing on screen, I'll probably have all of this cleaned up and just back to quark casings instead of this random stuff. The only other thing we got going on here, which for the logic circuit will go down, there's essentially 4 signals I'm giving off from this guy down to the logic circuit that we'll get to. The first is, do we have grade 7 water, which is required for the recipe? Do I have enough in molten infinity in here? Now, I did just do infinity ingots into a fluid extractor into this, and I did it this way instead of just using this into here, because I find for whatever reason the crafting card doesn't seem to work very well with fluid, or jams up a lot and whatnot, so I didn't want to mess around with that, whereas it seems to work just fine for non-fluid items. So this crafting card is crafting ingots to come into here to then just, and this is actually putting some of my old HV stuff to work, because I don't need it to go fast, and HV is all you need for infinity. And plus I didn't want the buffer on this to be too crazy. I don't need like buttloads of infinity over here. Then down here, like, oh, I didn't realize it shut down that 2 hours ago. Gross. Nice. So you can see I was struggling with some Infinity issues, and I'm actually surprised it had that. I wonder if I just forgot to turn it back on, because I had it shut down due to that issue, but yeah, that's interesting. Whatever. From this guy, we've got this signal in here telling it to start. And then the last thing, actually, which I didn't end up putting in here, is I didn't realize I forgot to put this back in, is advanced receiver internal. I actually saw in the 2.9 spoilers that this thing's getting renamed, which this guy is going to be gate mode 1008. 008. Boom. Alright, so now it's actually complete. That's funny. So we're getting the last piece of information we're getting from over here is this guy is fluid detector cover, checking to see if there's 2,000 of this. Why is that not buried? Something weird has happened here where because this definitely needs to be locked to that. Let's see. Sorry. I just want to make sure the other one's locked to water. That's crazy. Okay, that one is locked to the grade 8 water. So this is important up here. So once the cycle, like the inputs of quarks, is correct, if we look at the tooltip again, we can see that as soon as the right combination is input, it immediately outputs 2,000 liters of the stabilized baryonic matter, which right here we have this fluid detector cover going and telling the logic system, hey, the recipe's a success, stop inputting quarks. So that's what that one's doing. And then finally, this is up here just to, at the end of the 120 second cycle, it pulls out the fluid. And this 819 circuit is literally just down there while the system's running. This is essentially outputting, hey, 120 seconds has passed. So this was my solution, because I was messing around a lot with redundancies, but let's just go down into the logic circuit right now for it. Now, I'll warn you, I'm not the greatest with logic gates. I feel like I overcomplicate it or don't reduce enough on it. So it's kind of a mess and kind of repetitive through. There is probably a better way to do this. I'm not going to lie. But essentially, what we got going on here, and I actually, funnily enough, you can actually see the circuit. The one flaw with this setup I have, and I wasn't able to fix it and finally just said screw it, is you can see right now it's kind of hard to tell, but you see how this lever's to the south while it's running? This means I essentially wasted a 120 second cycle where it does still eat power from the machine. Like, it's running at 8 parallels, so 64 million EU per tick for that 120 seconds. But now, if you look at the timers, now that the switch is to the north, this timer's running, and I was not able to figure out a way to reset it so I never have that wasted cycle in there. But the nice thing is, with the current setup, no matter what happens, like if there's a mix and match of what's going on, and I'll explain the different ones, like how we got these two different cycles. Like right now, if the machine broke, the worst that would happen is I'd waste a little infinity, which sucks, but it would never take more than 120 seconds for the circuit itself to fix itself, because this thing is the way it's set up over here. Now, what we've got going on, so originally in my head I thought I was going to need 4 different intervals to tell the logic circuit to run, and then I realized that there's a couple of problems with that. For example, one of these is the amount, if it'll only run if I have the requisite amount of molten infinity. Now, the problem with that is obviously infinity is consumed as it's going. And say I just have barely enough infinity to start, and if it consumes the infinity the first 4 catalysts are in, it'll actually technically drop it below the level, which the way I had it done in here would have shut the circuit down. So now the only thing telling this circuit to, this whole logic thing to go, is this receiver, which this receiver is just coming off a transmitter from the block saying, hey, the machine is actually running right now. Then Over here, I also had this guy wired in, and then realized, no, that's also kind of silly, and was creating weird, like, loop things. Is this one is telling us, hey, now that this is off, and the only reason it's inverted is because it saves me a bunch of NOT gates, or I technically could have thrown a NOT gate here. It really didn't matter, like, just personal preference, which way you want to do it. This guy is here, the receiver for how much baryonic fluid, and so once that thing registers 2,000 liters, it actually technically turns this circuit off, which, if you're looking at all these are the 18 different times that you insert quarks, essentially. Like, there are 18 lines here. As you can see, it's on now. There's no fluid in there. This is an AND gate, so it needs the fluid to send this signal, which, again, there are 18, meaning there are three that coordinate to each one of the quarks. So, like, every time one of these triggers, it, like, drops a quark, and the way it does it is, like, say this one's 801, it goes through its logic, triggers the 801, comes in here, which all three of these are different parts in the sequence where we want to drop quark number 1, goes to this transmitter, and then this transmitter is the one that correlates to the one on the multi-block that drops quark 1, and then so on and so forth. There's 6 of these setups. Now what's going on in here, so again, we got this turn on, and then this guy here is the NOT gate. We need it to be a NOT gate, because if you don't, I mean, technically you can throw a NOT gate back here, and whatever. Again, preference. I use the NOT gate because the NOT gate keeps the timer off. So what will happen is when the signal circuit's starting, let's find one that's still running, because it's actually, this one's going deep. So, like here, we've got a signal from here, so this NOT gate turns off, so this timer's running. Once this timer trips once to send a signal to here, it also loops back in on itself to this toggle gate, which then turns this on, turns the red signal here and turns this timer off. And the reason we do that is, say for example, the way I decided to go about it, like I said, there's probably a more efficient way. The way I went about it is like, okay, I need to drop 18 times. I'm just going to set the timer to start. So once we hit 0, this guy fires at 25 seconds, I believe, and then each one increments 5 seconds after that. The whole reason I went with 25, though, was just to give the auto crafting part of the logic, or part of the system, time to craft those two catalysts, like the most time I could allow it to craft those two catalysts and then get back in the system, so that it doesn't, if for some reason we get to a higher count of quarks needing to be inserted to get the correct pair, we don't, like, run into a problem where I just don't have it. So you can see now, this guy is the first one in the line, 25 seconds. He's coming around, and as soon as he trips, he's going to trip a signal through here. He's going to come around, and now this guy shut off, and then this one will trip its signal, shut off, and so on and so forth. Every 5 seconds it'll trip until finally the correct pair is done, and then as soon as the correct pair is done, this signal turns off, so these no longer go. Now the rest of these timers will continue to go, because I was gonna build in resets and blah blah blah, but honestly I found it easier to just let them run and then just have this signal here as an AND gate on all of them to just cut it off. So even though technically the timer spins and hit its mark, it can't actually send the signal because this receiver is preventing the AND gate from pushing the signal through. And then, yeah, you just rinse and repeat it 18 times, and at some point, where are we at? One of these will give me the right quark. Not that one. Not that one. Oh yeah, it's technically down here. Nope. Oh, and there we go. It turned off, so now we know the recipe up there succeeded, because the rest of these are still going. And mainly that gets the toggle gate back in the right spot. So yeah, that's really it. Got the grade 8 circuit. Over here, this is the only thing I've, like, contributed myself to the I've said it a bunch of times, but I just copied that. This is the single thread logic to make it so only one multi-block is running. The only thing I changed on it personally was I added this final block here, which this guy is receiving the signal from the Molten Infinity input hatch. So kind of like these ones where it needs the logic of, hey, does the next one in line have enough level 7 water to fire? That's what this block does, and level 6, 5, 4, blah, blah. This one is just, hey, does it have enough Molten Infinity to trigger this guy to go off, which at the moment it does. And I do have this one set to shut off after a certain point because I don't have enough Infinity. I did, basically the thing that's holding me back on Infinity, ironically enough, is just diamonds. So I would like to, you see, I only have 6,000 diamonds, which is crazy. I had like millions and millions, but I've just used so much Infinity. So my diamond supply. So that's basically now my plans going forward are I need to address power before it becomes an issue, because it will come an issue soon. And then address better Infinity, but I want the power so I can use the dimensional forge recipes for Infinity, for example. Like specifically, like the whole reason I made the Infinity B is because you can use this recipe, get ingot of Infinity worth of molten, and then very quickly with like hypogen coils, which I don't have yet, but you know, like once I have the power to make this stuff really fast, like look how much Infinity we start getting out of this. Like it scales up really fast, so that'll be really cool. It's just I need the power to back that up, which I don't have at the moment. I need better Infinity to get to said power without it being a struggle, and then just a bunch of other stuff. But now that I have the fluids, I can start making progress into UIV and start working towards these other tools that'll help speed things up for me. Like I said, the proxy crafting input buffer is one I'm aiming for, so I hope it's as good as it sounds, and other stuff like that. So yeah, I appreciate you for watching. I know there's a little bit of a longer one. If you have any questions about my setup or anything like that, by all means let me know, and I will respond and let you know. But yeah, appreciate you for watching. I hope you have a good weekend, and I will hopefully be back Monday. Goodbye.